We are following a bit of breaking news as President Trump has just posted to Truth Social, putting that up on your screen here for you now.
What Trump's surprise intelligence pick could mean for the U.S. right now. Imagine waking up one morning and finding out that the person now in charge of every spy agency, every secret the government holds, every piece of classified intelligence that crosses the president's desk is a guy whose biggest credential is overseeing the mortgage market. Not a former general, not a career intelligence officer, not someone who spent decades in the CIA or the NSA or any of the 18 agencies that make up the United States intelligence community. No, a real estate heir and housing regulator. That's not the plot of a political thriller. That's what happened in America on the 2nd of June, 2026. And if you think this story is just about one appointment, if you think this is just Washington drama with no real consequences for you, for the country, or for the world, then you are going to want to stay with me right now, because what is happening here goes much, much deeper than a single name on a Truth Social post. Welcome back. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell so you never miss a breakdown like this one. And if you find this kind of deep dive journalism valuable, drop a like. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear what is actually going on in Washington. Share this video with someone today, because this is one of those stories that every American citizen deserves to understand. Let's start at the very beginning, because context is everything here. The Director of National Intelligence. Most people don't think about this role on a daily basis, and that's actually by design. The DNI is supposed to be the quiet, steady hand behind the curtain of national security. The person who sits at the center of a web connecting 18 different intelligence agencies, the CIA, the NSA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the FBI's National Security Division, and more. This person delivers the Presidential Daily Brief, the most sensitive document in the American government. They coordinate the entire intelligence apparatus that the United States depends on to understand what Russia is doing, what China is planning, what Iran is building, what North Korea is hiding. They are, in the truest sense of the word, America's chief spy. The law itself, the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act, signed back in 2004 after the failures of September 11th, says explicitly that the Director of National Intelligence, quote, shall have extensive national security expertise. Not financial expertise. Not real estate expertise. National security expertise. That's what the law says. So when President Trump posted on Truth Social on June 2nd, 2026, announcing that he was appointing William J. Pulte, Bill Pulte, as acting Director of National Intelligence, that single move sent shockwaves through Washington in a way that is hard to overstate. Who is Bill Pulte? Let me paint the picture. Born in 1988 in Boynton Beach, Florida. Grandson of William J. Pulte, the founder of Pulte Group, one of America's largest residential home building companies. He studied broadcast journalism at Northwestern University, not intelligence, not national security, not military strategy, broadcast journalism. He founded a private equity firm called Pulte Capital in 2011. He gained a measure of public fame on social media for giving away money online, which earned him the nickname Twitter Santa. He made money buying and selling air conditioning companies. And in January of 2025, President Trump nominated him to lead the Federal Housing Finance Agency, the FHFA, an agency that oversees Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the broader mortgage market. He was confirmed by the Senate in March of 2025. And now, just over a year into that job, with zero intelligence experience, zero military background, zero clearance history before this administration, he is the man being handed the keys to America's entire intelligence kingdom. Now, before we talk about what this means going forward, we have to understand what has been happening at the FHFA under Pulte's watch. Because this is not a man who kept a low profile in his housing role. Far from it. Pulte became one of the most controversial figures in the entire Trump administration, and that is saying something in an administration that has never lacked for controversy. From his perch at the Federal Housing Finance Agency, Pulte did something that stunned legal experts across the country. He sent criminal referrals to the Department of Justice alleging mortgage fraud, not against random bad actors in the housing market, mind you, against some of the most prominent Democratic political figures in America. He referred New York Attorney General Letitia James, who had previously taken legal action against Trump. He referred United States Senator Adam Schiff of California. He referred Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. He referred former Congressman Eric Swalwell. Every single person on that list was either a political opponent of Donald Trump or someone Trump had publicly threatened with retribution before Pulte sent those referrals. Every single one. And here's the kicker. Reports emerge that Pulte bypassed his own agency's internal watchdog, the Office of Inspector General, which is the office that would normally make such referrals. He went directly to the Justice Department. That took people at the FHFA by surprise. That's what sources told reporters. Democratic senators were furious. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senator Dick Durbin, and 8 colleagues sent a letter to the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, demanding an investigation into whether Pulte had misused federal resources and privileged non-public mortgage data to go after the president's political enemies. And the GAO opened that investigation. A congressional watchdog was literally investigating this man at the very moment Trump decided to elevate him to lead the entire intelligence community. Let me say that again so it lands the way it should. A man under congressional investigation for potentially weaponizing a federal housing agency against political opponents is now being placed in charge of the most powerful intelligence apparatus on the planet. That's where we are. Senator Warren and her colleagues described it plainly. They wrote that instead of prioritizing housing affordability, Pulte had, in their words, abused his power and authority as FHFA director to engage in what can only be described as a politically motivated public campaign to attack the president's perceived adversaries. Now, you can dismiss that as Democratic opposition talking points if you want. But when the Government Accountability Office, a nonpartisan independent agency, opens a formal probe in response, that tells you the concern crosses partisan lines in a serious way. And now this same man will have access to the presidential daily brief. Will coordinate the CIA, the NSA, and 16 other intelligence agencies. Will sit on the National Security Council. Will be the principal intelligence advisor to the President of the United States. Let's talk about how we got here, because Pulte's appointment doesn't exist in a vacuum. He is replacing Tulsi Gabbard, who served as Trump's first DNI. Gabbard resigned in May of 2026. The official explanation was her husband's health. Whatever the real reasons, her departure created a vacuum. Trump had initially said Aaron Lucas, the principal deputy director of national intelligence, would take over on an acting basis, a more conventional pick who at least has some institutional knowledge of the intelligence world. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, Trump turned around and picked Pulte instead. And if you understand how this White House operates, that pivot tells you something. Lucas was the safe, expected choice. Pulte is something else entirely. Pulte is a loyalist, pure and simple. Someone whose entire career in government has been defined by absolute fidelity to the president and a willingness to use the powers of his office in ways that stretch, and in some critics' view break, conventional norms. Trump's own justification on Truth Social was revealing. He praised Pulte's, quote, deep experience managing the most sensitive matters in America, the safety and soundness of the markets, and over $10 trillion at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. $10 trillion. That was Trump's argument for why a housing regulator should run American intelligence. The ability to manage a big balance sheet. That's the credential being offered to the American public as sufficient for overseeing CIA covert operations, NSA surveillance programs, and intelligence briefings that shape decisions about war and peace. Now, defenders of this move, and there are some, will say several things. They'll say that the role of the DNI is fundamentally managerial and administrative. That the DNI doesn't need to be a spy. They need to be a strong manager who can coordinate massive bureaucracies and break down the silos that led to failures like September 11th. They'll say that Trump's use of loyalists rather than establishment figures is a feature, not a bug, that the intelligence community has its own deep set of institutional biases and political preferences that have influenced its outputs, and that having an outsider willing to challenge those norms is exactly what the moment requires. They'll say that the acting designation means this is temporary, a placeholder, while Trump finds a permanent nominee to put through the confirmation process. Those arguments exist, and they deserve to be heard fairly. The DNI role was, in fact, created precisely because the old system of having career intelligence professionals run individual agencies without coordination failed catastrophically. The position was designed to be a kind of executive manager sitting above the agencies. So the argument that management skill matters is not ridiculous on its face. But here's where the debate gets really sharp. Because there's a fundamental difference between bringing in a manager from outside the intelligence world and bringing in someone whose specific record in government has been defined by using federal powers to target political opponents. The question isn't just whether Pulte can manage a bureaucracy. The question is, what will he do with the most powerful intelligence tools in human history? Because the DNI doesn't just manage. The DNI sets priorities for what the intelligence community collects, analyzes, and reports. The DNI determines what information gets to the president and how it's framed. The DNI coordinates with the NSA on surveillance capabilities and with the CIA on covert operations. This is power on a scale that dwarfs anything the FHFA ever had. If critics are right that Pulte already weaponized mortgage data against political opponents at a low-profile housing agency, what does he do when he has access to NSA intercepts? What does he do with CIA intelligence on domestic political figures? What does he do with the Presidential Daily Brief, the most sensitive document in America, when it contains information that could be politically useful to an administration that has shown it is not shy about using government power for political ends? These are not hypothetical questions. These are the questions that intelligence oversight experts, former CIA directors, and national security lawyers were raising within hours of this announcement. Former officials who spent careers in the intelligence community understand something that often gets lost in the political noise. The DNI is not just a coordinator. The DNI shapes the culture of the entire intelligence community. The signals sent from the top about what is valued, objectivity, independence, speaking truth to power, or what is discouraged, those signals ripple down through hundreds of thousands of people with clearances. When the person at the top has a track record of prioritizing loyalty over process, that changes the institution. It changes what analysts think their job is. It changes what gets reported and what gets buried. That's not partisan speculation. That's how large institutions work. Leadership shapes culture. Culture shapes outcomes. And here is something else worth examining closely. Pulte is not leaving his other roles. Trump made that explicit in his Truth Social post. Pulte will remain director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. He will remain chairman of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. He is simultaneously going to run the office of the Director of National Intelligence. Let's think about what that means. This is a man who will be overseeing a $10 trillion slice of the American mortgage market, while also coordinating 18 spy agencies, while also reviewing the presidential daily brief every day, while also managing the political fallout of a GAO investigation into his conduct. How does one person do all of that? And what happens when the interests of one role conflict with the demands of another? The FHFA job alone is supposed to be a full-time senior executive position. The DNI job is supposed to be more than full-time. Running both simultaneously raises serious questions about capacity, focus, and the possibility of conflicts of interest that would be genuinely unprecedented in American history. There is also a legal dimension worth understanding. The law governing the DNI position states that the director, quote, shall have extensive national security expertise. That language is in the statute. Legal experts were already questioning whether an acting appointment of someone who by no stretch of the imagination has extensive national security expertise creates a statutory problem. Acting appointments have been used by administrations of both parties to bypass the confirmation process for senior positions, but those appointments have typically, though not always, gone to people with at least some relevant background. This situation is different. It's different in degree, and it may be different in kind. Now let's zoom out, because what is happening here is part of a broader pattern that deserves honest examination regardless of where you stand politically. Over the past year and a half of Trump's second term, the administration has systematically placed loyalists into positions that were traditionally staffed by career professionals with deep institutional expertise. Some of those appointments have been controversial but defensible. There are genuine arguments about when political appointees are necessary to drive change in bureaucracies that resist presidential direction. But the placement of Pulte at the DNI takes that logic to a new level, because the intelligence community is not just any bureaucracy. It is the institution tasked with providing the president and the country with objective, unvarnished reality. Its value depends entirely on its credibility as an independent assessor of facts. The moment the intelligence community is perceived by allies, by adversaries, by the American public as an instrument of partisan politics rather than objective truth-seeking, it loses something that takes decades to rebuild and can never fully be recovered. America's allies in Europe, in Asia, in the Five Eyes Intelligence Partnership, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, are watching this appointment. They share intelligence with the United States based on a fundamental assumption that American intelligence institutions are serious professional organizations governed by norms of objectivity and security. When they see a political loyalist with no intelligence background placed at the top of that system, they have to ask themselves hard questions. How much do we share? How confident are we that what we share won't be used in ways we can't predict? These are questions that damage alliances quietly, slowly, in ways that don't make headlines but have real consequences for national security over time. And America's adversaries are watching too. Russia's intelligence services, China's Ministry of State Security, Iran's intelligence apparatus. They are all studying this appointment. And what they see is an opportunity, a moment of transition, and potential disarray at the top of American intelligence that they can potentially exploit. Every transition of leadership in any intelligence community is a moment of vulnerability. This one, happening in the context of an acting appointment of an unqualified loyalist, is a bigger vulnerability than most. But here's the thing. And I want to be honest with you about this, because this channel doesn't deal in simple good versus evil narratives. There is a scenario in which this story ends differently than critics fear. That scenario goes something like this. Pulte, whatever his record at the FHFA, is a smart man who understands that he is now playing in a completely different arena. He might surround himself with serious professionals. He might defer to career intelligence officers on substantive questions about collection and analysis. He might use his access and his relationship with the president to actually deliver intelligence to the Oval Office that career officials struggled to break through on. Presidents have sometimes listened to loyalists when they tune out professionals. If Pulte becomes a conduit for serious intelligence rather than a filter for political intelligence, the outcome might be better than anticipated. Stranger things have happened in Washington. The problem is that nothing in Pulte's record at the FHFA suggests that version of events. Nothing about sending criminal referrals against political opponents suggests someone who defaults to process and professional norms when there's a politically attractive alternative. And that's what makes this appointment genuinely alarming to serious people across the political spectrum. Not just Democrats, but Republicans and former intelligence professionals who have spent their lives protecting the institutions that keep this country safe. Here is where we land today. The United States is facing an unprecedented leadership arrangement at the apex of its intelligence community. A 37-year-old real estate heir with a broadcast journalism degree and a record of using government powers against political opponents is now the acting head of an 18-agency intelligence apparatus covering everything from satellite surveillance to covert operations to counterterrorism. He holds that position simultaneously with two other senior government roles. He is under congressional investigation for his conduct in one of those other roles. The law that created his new position says he should have extensive national security expertise. He has none. What happens next will depend on several things. Will Congress push back? There are already voices, not just Democrats, raising concerns about the qualifications question and the conflicts of interest. Will the permanent nominee, whenever Trump names one, be someone with actual national security credentials who can go through Senate confirmation and bring legitimacy to the role? Will the career professionals in the intelligence community maintain the standards and independence that make their work valuable, regardless of who is nominally running the organization from the top? And will Pulte himself surprise his critics and rise to a moment that few believe he is equipped for? These are open questions. And honestly, that uncertainty is itself a problem. Because uncertainty at the top of the intelligence community is not a neutral condition. It is a condition that America's adversaries will seek to exploit, and that America's allies will respond to with increased caution. What I can tell you with confidence is this: the Director of National Intelligence is not a symbolic title. It is not a reward for loyalty. It is not an administrative paperwork job. It is the position from which one person shapes what truth reaches the most powerful decision-makers in the world's most powerful country. When that position is filled with someone chosen for loyalty rather than expertise, at a moment of global instability, when the world is watching every signal America sends about its seriousness and its judgment, the consequences are not theoretical. They are real. They are ongoing. And they belong to all of us. If you watch this entire video, I want you to know something. The fact that you're here, engaging with these stories, asking these questions, that matters. Democracy doesn't run on autopilot. It runs on informed, engaged citizens who refuse to look away. Share this video. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read them, and the debate that happens down there genuinely shapes what we cover next. Hit the like button if this gave you something to think about. And subscribe if you haven't already, because we are going to keep following this story as it develops, and trust me, is going to develop. Stay with us.